Hey guys, tonight we're drifting back, not just a few years or even centuries, but all the way into the thick, sticky fog of prehistory. You know, that weird place where the facts are soggy and the myths are wearing glasses pretending to be science. We're going to talk about a turtle. Not just any turtle, though. The turtle. The one who carried the whole world on its back. And no, it's not a metaphor for your workload this week, though honestly, same. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. I want to imagine the exact moment you're falling asleep to the sound of ancient cosmic turtles. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle forward through the mist. It's thick, but not the bad horror movie kind. This mist feels warm, like someone's brewing tea in the sky. You can't see your feet, which is fine because you don't really feel them either. All around you, there's water. Not crashing waves or cold currents, just endless, mirror-smooth water stretching in every direction. No sky, no stars, no shore, just this infinite bathtub of existence. And you're not alone. There's a ripple, then another. Little figures bob to the surface. Otters, muskrats, beavers all blinking slowly at you like, yeah, this is normal. They're not in a hurry. Nobody's in a hurry. This is a time before urgency was invented, before clocks or emails or even chairs. From above, something falls, a woman. She doesn't scream, she doesn't flail, she just descends. Draped in light, long hair floating behind her like seaweed in the windless sky. She's Sky Woman, and you don't know how you know that, but you do. Maybe you read it in a past life's bedtime story. The animals rush forward, not with panic, but reverence. A giant turtle surfaces from below, broad as a continent. His shell is ancient and cracked, with ridges like mountain ranges. And yes, he's somehow hovering right at the surface, like a floating island in standby mode. The creatures stack together, building a platform, until Sky Woman lands gently on the turtle's back. Her hands, delicate but dirt-hungry, dig into the cracks. She sprinkles something from her clenched fists, bits of root, seed, and, well, mud she gathered in her descent, because even falling was part of the plan. And just like that, Earth begins. You feel it growing beneath your feet. The turtle's back pulsing gently with the heartbeat of a planet in its first trimester. The ridges start to bloom with moss and brush. Water trickles into riverbeds that weren't there 5 seconds ago, and air becomes a thing. Not just space, but real, breathable, wind-kiss-your-face air. You take a deep breath. It's somewhere between eucalyptus and campfire. Now here's the weird part. Well, weirder part. Look closely at the turtle's shell. You notice 13 larger plates in the middle and 28 smaller ones circling them. That's not just cool turtle fashion, it's a lunar calendar. 13 moons in a year, 28 days in each moon. Some tribes say this is how the original calendar was born, etched into the back of the world itself. Of course, some historians scoff at this idea. Coincidence, they say, adjusting their glasses and sipping lukewarm conference coffee. But then again, those same historians also once believed tomatoes were poisonous. So, grain of salt. The Sky Woman begins to move, her bare feet stirring seeds into soil, every step birthing wild flowers, corn, squash. You follow her steps, and the land builds itself under you like a video game map loading in real time. Trees bloom, birds invent songs. Somewhere off to the left, a squirrel composes jazz. You pause, the turtle blinks. Slow. Content. It's not in pain. It volunteered for this. In some stories, this turtle is a great spirit. In others, it's just a turtle that was extremely in the right place at the right time. But in almost every telling, this turtle is kind. Steady. Not a warrior or a king, but the ground under your feet. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing you can be is dependable. Sky Woman looks at you. Not directly, but you feel it. Like when someone thinks of you from across a dream. She doesn't speak. She doesn't have to. You're standing at the beginning, not of a year or a century, but of story. The kind that carries everything inside it. Roots, rivers, regret, redemption. And yes, a really, really big turtle. The breeze shifts. You feel it tug at your sleeve. Something is changing. Far off. A rumble. Not threatening, but insistent. Like history waking up. And just like that, you remember. The world has always been told before it was built. Stories first. Structures later. You lean down, touch the mossy shell beneath you. It feels like the back of your grandfather's hand, calloused, warm, familiar, alive. You look up, the sky is no longer blank. Tiny stars blink into being, hesitant at first, then confident. You hear a muskrat mumbling to itself, and honestly, same. You sit down. The land is still forming, but it's safe here for now. The kind of safety only found in myth or between the covers of your favorite book. You feel sleep starting to fog the edges of your thoughts, but before you slip away completely, you realize you're standing on a promise carried on the back of a turtle. And this is only the beginning. You don't remember standing up, but now you're walking. The moss beneath your feet is soft, like memory foam, but more judgmental. Ahead, the horizon bends, curving ever so slightly like you're walking on something that was never flat to begin with. Because, well, you are. The world is still young. You can hear it stretching, creaking, like a house settling after a long storm. Somewhere far below, the turtle shifts its weight. Not a lot. Just enough to remind you that everything you know, sky, land, story, is still balancing on its slow, patient back. The air tastes different now. A bit saltier. The world has filled with water again, but not the endless nothingness from before. These are lakes, rivers, oceans, with their own ideas about where they should be. You can almost hear them bickering like elderly roommates. And then you hear them. Two voices. At first, they sound like wind scraping against trees, but they sharpen quickly. One is smooth and low, like honey left in the sun. The other is sharp and brittle, like frost sneaking under your windowsill. These are the twins. Sky Woman gave birth to them after landing, according to some stories. Others say they came from her breath, her dreams, or her shadow. Nobody can really agree, and the twins aren't helping the argument. The smoother one walks in a spiral. Everything he touches turns into streams, flowers, steady winds. He builds, he balances. He's calm, but not soft. The sharper one, he walks in zigzags. The grass he passes withers just slightly. He doesn't destroy, not outright, but he resists, tests, twists. He wants to see what breaks. You follow them, not too close. These aren't gods in the sense of glowing halos and harp music. They're more like uncles who show up at family dinners and argue about which way the toilet paper should face. Constantly in tension, and oddly familiar. Everywhere they walk, the world changes. Forests sprout and then burn. Mountains rise, then erode. Animals appear, some cute, some with way too many teeth. The twins don't speak to you directly, but they glance at you now and then as if to say, "You seeing this? This is your inheritance." One of them creates the deer, nimble and alert. The other creates mosquitoes. You're not sure which one deserves more applause. As the twins pass each other, the world wobbles. Not dangerously, just enough to remind you, this land is young, experimental. Some days it might be brilliant, others it might forget how rivers work. The idea of balance keeps surfacing. It's not peace. It's not even fairness. It's just tension that holds, like a tightrope strung between morning and midnight. The twins walk it daily, creating seasons, tides, shadows. One lights the fire, the other reminds you not to touch it. Some traditions say the smoother twin went into the sky, becoming the sun. Others say he stayed in the soil, humming lullabies into the roots. The sharper twin, maybe he became the night, or politics, or that one sock you can never find. Historians argue about whether these twins are purely myth or symbolic of real rivalries between ancient tribes. Some even claim they represent shifting weather patterns, brain hemispheres, or the eternal battle between doing your taxes early and not. But you're not here for conclusions. You're here for the feeling, the way the twins make the world feel alive and unfinished, like a story you get to add to just by breathing. You walk past a pond now. Its surface ripples with old arguments. Dragonflies hover above like little gossips. The air thickens again. Night is coming, if that even means anything here. Overhead, the stars start organizing themselves. You realize they aren't random. They're gathering into patterns, like a quilt being sewn by invisible hands. Some take the shape of animals. One looks suspiciously like a turtle. Another might be a buffalo, or possibly a really confident chicken. There's a moment, so quiet it buzzes, when the smoother twin turns to his brother. For a flicker of time, they stop. They look up, then down, and for just a second, they both smile. It's not warm, not cold, just knowing. You sit on a patch of grass that feels grown just for you. Around you, The echoes of their footsteps leave glowing footprints in the dirt, fading slowly like thoughts you try to remember just before falling asleep. You're not sure what day it is, or if days exist yet, but you feel the rhythm settling in your bones, a heartbeat in the soil, a breath beneath the ground, and somewhere below it all, the turtle breathes. Slow, steady, the kind of breath that holds up galaxies. You wake, if that's the word for the floaty state between sleep and story, to the sound of humming. Not music exactly, more like the sound of wind learning a melody it hasn't quite mastered. It loops gently, the way you might trace circles on foggy glass without knowing why. The world is different again. You can tell before you even open your eyes. The colors feel softer, like the entire landscape has been lightly dusted in sleep. You're lying in a field now, grass curling around your fingers like curious cats. You sit up slowly. Nothing rushes you here, not even time. Across from you is something strange, a shape in the sky, not a cloud, not a bird, not a UFO, though you wouldn't rule that out just yet. It's a gap, a ripple, like the sky itself is remembering something. And then she falls through. She tumbles gently like a leaf ignoring gravity's urgency. Not the sky woman this time, but someone else. Younger, curious, wide-eyed in that way only characters in myths and toddlers can be. She lands near you without a sound. Doesn't flinch, just brushes her knees and looks at the world like it's a new notebook. You realize she's not here to break things or save them. She's here to ask. Every leaf, every puddle, every shifting breeze, she treats it like a question. This is the part of the story where listening begins. You follow her, not because you're told to, but because, why wouldn't you? Her footsteps make plants bloom and then fade, like the world is trying to impress her, but doesn't want to seem too desperate. You come to a clearing where animals are gathered. Otters again. Deer. A fox, wearing the expression of someone who's heard this story before, but likes the way it's told now. They're all watching her. She kneels and presses her ear to the ground, and hears something. You do it too, because you're nothing if not suggestible. At first, nothing, but then a pulse. Faint. Measured, like the earth itself has a slow, sleepy heartbeat, and you realize the turtle is still here, beneath everything, holding it together with a patience humans will never fully understand. But not everything is peaceful. Far in the distance, a storm brews, not weather, not clouds, but something older, a gathering of thoughts too heavy to float. They rumble low, like disapproval or forgotten anger. Even in this myth, even on this turtle, stories come with shadows. The girl stands and looks toward the dark horizon, not afraid, not angry, just considering, and then she speaks, and you swear the words sink into the soil. Tell me why. Just 3 words, but they echo through the air like chimes in a thunderstorm. The animals stir. The turtle beneath you shifts, barely noticeable, but definitely felt. You suddenly understand that myths don't just explain things. Sometimes they challenge them. They poke at truth like a child pokes jellyfish, with fascination and just a pinch of mischief. You walk again, this time not just beside her, but in rhythm. The path curls upward, not steep, but spiral, as if you're ascending a hill that doesn't want you to know where the top is. As you climb, you pass carvings in stone. Not writing, not exactly, more like memory graffiti, shapes that feel like thunder or grief. One looks like a turtle. Another looks like the void you fell from at the beginning of all this. You reach out, tracing the marks. They're warm, like they've been remembered recently. Then a voice, not hers, not yours, something older. It tells you of the first waterfall. Not the biggest or the loudest, but the one that invented falling. Before gravity had a job description, it fell for no reason except that it wanted to know what the bottom felt like. You hear laughter. Not cruel, not mocking. Just the universe chuckling at its own strange experiments. There's a story being told now, not in words, but in events. A boulder shifts, a tree leans, a bird changes its mind mid-flight. Every little adjustment in the world feels like punctuation in a sentence you're trying to follow. You arrive at the top of the spiral. There's no shrine, no throne, just sky. The girl sits, legs dangling over the edge of the world. You sit next to her. Far below, clouds stretch like blankets pulled too tight. The stars blink lazily. You feel small, but in a good way. The kind of small that means you're part of something massive, not ignored by it. She turns to you, finally, and says, "Do you feel it?" You do. You're not sure what it is, but it hums in your ribs. It's not knowledge, not wisdom, just awareness. The way you know when someone's watching you, or when a dream means more than it should. Below, the turtle exhales, and the world shifts just enough to remind you it's still being made, every second, every step, every silence. You close your eyes, and for a moment, everything holds still. You don't remember when you started descending, but now the slope under your feet dips gently downward, like the world is sighing into the next page of itself. The girl is no longer beside you. Not gone, just faded into the landscape, like a breeze that stays in your clothes but not your sight. Ahead, a ridge splits the land in two. On one side, tall pines, dark and ancient, the kind that whisper about your secrets even when you're just thinking them. On the other, open sky, low grass, and distant rivers glinting like spilled mercury. You head toward the trees, of course. You always do. That's where the oldest stories hide. As you pass the first trunks, something changes in the air. Thicker now. Not heavy, but meaningful. You feel like you're walking into a room mid-conversation, and that's when you hear it. Drums. Not loud, not fast. Just slow, steady pulses, like someone knocking politely on the doorway of your bones. Boom, boom, boom. The kind of rhythm that's less about music and more about remembering how to breathe properly. You come upon a clearing, and there they are. Not warriors, not spirits. Giants. Their shoulders are the size of boulders, their faces carved from mountain shadows. They sit in a circle, their backs curved from time, not age. One of them holds a flute made of bone. Another gently braids what looks like thunderclouds into a long silky rope. None of them looks surprised to see you. You've stumbled into the stories of the stone giants, beings from Native American lore so old, so large, so inarguably present that even the earth had to make room for them. Some say they were made of earth and ice. Others say they were the first dreamers who mistook the stars for fireflies and tried to catch them in jars. Most historians dismiss them entirely. Obviously metaphor, they mutter, before triple-checking whether woolly mammoths once roamed the same paths. But even those skeptics get quiet when they walk through certain forests, places where rocks look too much like knees and cliffs bear fingerprints. One of the giants looks at you. No words. Just that long, slow blink of someone who's been waiting for centuries and still isn't in a rush. He lifts one enormous hand and places something on the ground. A stone, maybe? No. It's an egg. Smooth, round, humble, and impossibly heavy. You don't pick it up. You just feel its gravity tugging at your breath. Another giant hums, low and grainy, like moss growing over a secret. As he does, the trees sway, not in the wind, but in agreement. You realize the forest isn't listening to the giants. It's with them, always has been. They begin to move now, slow as the shift of tectonic plates. One by one they rise, not to threaten, but to travel. They walk in a wide spiral, feet barely brushing the grass. With each step, mushrooms appear. With each turn, the moss thickens. They're drawing something into the earth, a memory maybe, a boundary, a lullaby in topographic form. You follow behind, steps sinking just a little deeper now. The air smells of flint and cedar. You pass stones etched with spirals, and it hits you. These aren't just leftovers from nature. They're notes, a rock symphony, written in a scale only remembered by lichen. One giant finally turns to you and places a hand on your shoulder. Just a finger, really. Enough to make your knees almost forget how to exist. Then, as if rehearsed, he says in a voice like gravel, deciding to sing, "You must carry a story." You want to ask which one, but you know the answer. Yours and theirs. And the one from before, stories were invented. Behind you, the egg begins to glow faintly. Not bright, just aware. The giants begin to fade, slowly, respectfully, as if walking back into the cracks of the world where they've always lived. Their footprints stay behind, filling with water, then fish, then lily pads. Entire ecosystems bloom in their absence. The forest exhales. You step into one of the giant's footprints and feel the ground hum. Not loudly, just enough to say, "You're part of this now." As you move forward, you notice something strange. The trees are leaning toward you, just slightly. Not enough to be alarming, but enough to suggest they're eavesdropping. And in the bark of the oldest oak, you see carvings, not from knives or hands, but from time itself. Curves, spirals, images of turtles, birds, moons. One carving looks like a map, though it leads nowhere, or maybe everywhere. You squint, you see the outline of a shell, and beneath it the smallest words etched into the wood, "Still breathing." You don't know if that's about the turtle or the story or you, but the forest agrees. A breeze stirs the leaves, not random, but musical. The trees aren't whispering. They're remembering aloud. You walk on, the egg heavier in your chest than in your hands. The world shifts again, not in direction, but in depth. Everything feels 1 inch closer to being known. And under it all, the turtle keeps breathing. The landscape stretches open again, like a lung refilling after a long pause. The forest falls behind you without a sound, as if it's retreating into itself, satisfied you've heard enough for now. The sky expands in your vision like a thought finally taking form. It's wide, a soft blue brushed with clouds that seem to know your name. You walk, not because there's somewhere to go, but because this world doesn't sit still. It pulses with story, and so do your feet. Ahead, something strange glints in the sunlight. It's not metal, not glass. It's curved, smooth, and distinctly patterned, like a mosaic of tiny shimmering tiles. You get closer and realize you're standing on a giant turtle shell again. Not the turtle from before, not the turtle, but a sculpture, maybe. Or an altar. Or a forgotten monument to something no one remembered to forget. Etched into the shell are markings, 13 large plates in the center, 28 smaller around the edge. You recognize it instantly. You've seen this before, but now you see it differently. The 13 inner plates aren't just decorations. They're moons, months, cycles. And the 28 smaller ones? Days. Lunar days. The math checks out. Nature made a calendar before we ever printed one. You run your fingers over the plates. The stone is cool, but the patterns pulse faintly under your skin like the beat of a drum muffled by moss. In many indigenous traditions, this design isn't just a symbol. It's a way of telling time without breaking it. No hours, no minutes, just rhythms. You realize this is a kind of memory too, not written in books, written in shell. Somewhere, far away, a loon cries. The sound is lonely, but not sad. It echoes across the open sky like someone trying to remember a song they only half remembered from childhood. You sit on the edge of the giant shell and look up. The sky begins to spin. Not fast, just deliberately. The stars rearrange themselves with a lazy elegance, forming constellations you don't recognize but feel you've seen before in a dream. One forms a bear, another a woman dancing, another a turtle again. Of course, you blink and it's gone. There's a thud behind you. You turn and see a figure standing quietly at the shell's edge. Cloaked in something between shadow and cedar smoke, they speak with a voice that feels like a branch snapping after a long snow. They counted with the moon, they say. Not clocks, not kings, just shadows and curves. You nod, it makes sense, even if you're not sure how. The shell tells time, they continue, but not the kind that rules you, the kind that reminds you. You want to ask what it's reminding you of, but you don't, because you feel it. In your chest, in your breath, in the way your fingers unconsciously tap out patterns on your knees. There's a rhythm here, not a schedule, a song. And then they tell you something you didn't expect. Women kept this time. The moons weren't just in the sky, they were in blood, in breath, in birth. You blink, the shell under you glows faintly as if it's agreeing, as if it's honoring. The voice continues. The calendar was not a thing you hung on the wall. It was something you lived inside, something that lived inside you. You stand slowly, look down. The patterns feel even clearer now, like a guide you were born knowing but forgot around the time smartphones got involved. And here's the strange part. That 28-day lunar rhythm, it's not just poetic, it's scientifically accurate too. For some species, humans included, this cycle shapes biology, emotion, even sleep. But we traded it for hours, for deadlines, for blinking red numbers on microwave displays and a sense of always being late. Most people forgot, the figure says, stepping away from the shell. They follow the sun now, not the moon, and not each other. The figure vanishes before you can say thank you, or sorry, or anything really. You're alone again, but not really, because the shell hums under you. The wind carries whispers of counting not in numbers but in breath. And somewhere far beneath your feet, the turtle shifts gently, as if aligning its heartbeat with the moon. You step off the shell and feel your own rhythm adjusting. You're not tracking time anymore. You're moving with it, a slow, lunar kind of remembering. Above, the clouds gather not in storms, but in shapes. They form spirals, arcs, the curve of a shell, a reminder that time doesn't have to tick. It can breathe, it can return. And right now, in this place that feels like a dream, you'll actually remember it is. You walk on, but now every step feels slower, not from fatigue, but from awareness. Like your feet finally understand they're touching something sacred. The ground isn't just dirt anymore, it's history with a pulse. The air changes again. There's a pull ahead. Not the kind that tugs your body, more like gravity aimed at your curiosity. The trees start to thin, replaced by wide stretches of open sky and grass tall enough to whisper secrets you're not quite supposed to hear. You brush past them anyway. They forgive you. Grasses are generous like that. And then you hear it. A whoosh overhead. Not wind. Not wings. Something bigger. Louder. Heavier. You look up. A shape glides across the clouds. Massive and deliberate. Wings wider than a mountain's spine. Feathers that shimmer like storm clouds stitched with sunlight. And a beak sharp enough to cut thunder in half. It's the thunderbird. You've heard about it before. Maybe in a textbook. Maybe in a story someone told you while stirring soup over a fire that burned a little too blue. Either way, it's real now, and somehow even knowing it's a myth doesn't make it any less here. The thunderbird doesn't fly, it commands the sky. Each wing beat causes distant rumblings, soft at first, then louder, until the whole horizon vibrates like a snare drum wrapped in clouds. Boom, boom, the sky flickers, lightning flashes behind it, not from it. That's the thing. The thunderbird doesn't cause storms. It is the storm, made visible for a few rare moments when the sky wants to brag a little. It circles once, then disappears into the clouds like a thought you almost had. You keep walking. Because what else do you do after meeting a sky spirit? Bake a cake? Update your LinkedIn? No. You just keep going and try to look like you weren't just humbled by a celestial weather bird. You come across a hill that hums gently. It's not music exactly, it's the sound of memory settling into the soil. On top of the hill, a circle of stones, not arranged by accident, not dropped by glaciers. These were placed deliberately, reverently. Each stone points in a direction, north, south, skyward, inward. Some are carved, others have been worn smooth by wind and hands. You sit beside one shaped like a beak, and you remember the stories. Thunderbird doesn't just bring the rain, it brings justice. It watches high above, judging not your words but your silences, not your actions but your intentions. In some versions, it fights great serpents underground. In others, it comes only when you've forgotten to respect the balance between the world beneath your feet and the sky above your head. Some say it takes the form of a man during thunderstorms, tall and sharp-eyed, dressed in black, speaking only in riddles. Others say it never takes human form, because why would it want to? Historians, of course, are baffled. They argue Thunderbird legends are symbolic, representing power, divine punishment, maybe even actual meteorological events. Sure. But then why do so many different nations spread across the continent describe the same bird? Same wingspan, same power. Same sound like the sky cracking its knuckles. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the Thunderbird doesn't care who believes in it. Maybe it just flies when it wants, watching, waiting, wing beats shaking the memories out of clouds. You stay seated for a while, listening to the breeze try to imitate thunder. It doesn't quite pull it off, but you give it points for effort. You think about power now, not the loud kind, not the kind that posts about itself, but the kind that hides in the sky, in wind, in the way animals grow silent right before lightning strikes. Thunderbird isn't about destruction, it's about consequence. About knowing that every action echoes, that the sky remembers, that the rain falls differently depending on your intentions. You stand, dust off your hands, look up again. The clouds are quiet now, but somehow you know the Thunderbird is still up there. Waiting. You walk on, slower than before. Not because you're tired, but because now you know you're being watched, not judged, witnessed. And far beneath your feet, the turtle shifts again. Just a little. Just enough to keep the balance, just enough to let the wind carry thunder without breaking the sky. The wind has softened now, like it's exhaling after holding something in for far too long. You walk with a quiet kind of awe, the kind that follows thunder, not fear, not thrill, just the reverberation of being very small in a very old world. The land ahead rolls into gentle hills, each one like a folded blanket left out under the stars. You crest one and stop, because you're not alone. A group has gathered in a clearing below, not people exactly, but figures. half in shadow, half in starlight. They're seated in a wide circle, faces turned upward, eyes fixed not on you but the sky. Their presence doesn't startle you. It welcomes you, silently, like a seat at a table already warmed by stories. You sit too, and you look up. At first, you don't see anything special, just stars scattered like sugar on a dark countertop. But then, slowly they begin to shift, not the way stars usually shift, inching across the heavens like snails with commitment issues. No, these stars are dancing. They slide into patterns, connect in lines invisible to anyone not listening closely enough. The figures beside you begin to hum, not in melody, but in memory. They're guiding the constellations into place, not with hands, but with recognition. And there it is, the shell. A great turtle, formed entirely by starlight. Its back curved across the sky, its limbs reaching toward the corners of the earth, its tail vanishing behind a sliver of moon. You can even see the faint outline of the 13 inner plates, the 28 outer. The lunar calendar above you now, not just beneath your feet. You're inside the same story, just told from a different angle. And the figures begin to whisper. They speak names into the night, not loudly, not for effect. Just to remember, names of stars as the people once knew them. The Fisher, the celestial bear, the path of the spirits. These aren't constellations like we call them now. Not Latin, not Greek. These are maps formed not for navigation, but for remembering who we are. You feel it suddenly. The sky isn't above you anymore. It's around you, inside you. The stars aren't distant, they're reflective, like they're waiting for you to remember your shape among them. A figure beside you leans in, their breath warm as campfire smoke. They used to tell the seasons by these stars, they murmur. When to plant, when to hunt, when to gather, when to let the land rest. You nod slowly, because you can feel that too. The way certain stars tug differently at your chest depending on the month, the mood, the moon. The figure continues. Every family had their own way of reading the sky. Some said the stars were the stories of their ancestors. Others said they were the eyes of them, watching softly from above. You glance back up, and in that moment, one star twinkles brighter than the rest, just for a second, just enough to feel seen. Another whisper beside you. They say when you die, you don't disappear. You join the pattern, not as punishment, as place. A star for every storyteller, a line for every connection, a sky that never forgets you, even if your name fades on the ground. You look across the clearing now and realize the figures seated beside you are not others. They are you, versions of you, dreams you forgot, ancestors you never met, a future self who once remembered everything and is patiently waiting for you to catch up. You blink, and the sky shifts again. Now it's a bear, then a canoe, then a circle with a single line through it, like a doorway not yet opened. The constellations here don't follow rules, they follow relationships. And as they fade one by one into the soft blue wash of pre-dawn light, you feel a fullness in your chest. Not sadness, not joy, just the quiet understanding that you are part of the pattern. You stand. The figures fade gently, not like vanishing, more like smoke joining the air it came from. And above, where the turtle once glowed across the sky, only a few faint stars remain. But the shape, the curve of the shell, the stretch of its limbs, you still see it. Not with your eyes now, with something deeper. The wind brushes your shoulder like a memory you'll never lose again. And somewhere, way beneath you, the turtle breathes, timed perfectly to the turn of the stars. You walk at dawn now, the sky bleeding soft peach and pale lavender across the edge of the world. Everything is hushed, like the planet itself hasn't had its coffee yet. The light stretches long shadows across the hills, and even your own feels like it's taking a moment to gather itself. Ahead, a cool breeze curls through tall grass, carrying with it a scent you can't quite place. Not flowers, not earth. It smells like expectation. The ground under your feet hardens, less moss, more stone. You follow a winding path marked by smooth, flat rocks, each one carved with symbols, a sun, a spiral, a handprint. You touch them as you pass. They hum softly, like they've been waiting for your fingers to trace them again. You crest a hill and stop. In the valley below, everything is different. It's colder here. You see it in the pale blue frost clinging to the edge of every leaf, every branch, even the tips of birds' wings mid-flight. It's not harsh, it's new. This is the first winter. You descend slowly, breath rising in little clouds like offerings. Down in the valley, a village of sorts has been etched into the landscape, not built, blended. The lodges are part of the earth, rising from the ground as if the soil shaped itself into shelter. Wisps of smoke curl from their tops, not in straight lines, but in spirals, dancing in patterns even the wind respects. At the center of it all sits a figure made entirely of cold. You almost don't see him at first. He blends into the frost like regret into silence. But when he speaks, the air sharpens. "I am the wind," he says, voice crisp as cracked ice, "and I've come to test the world." He's not cruel, just firm. He's the part of winter that doesn't hate you, but still makes you wear 3 layers and question your life choices every morning. You watch as his breath carries across the village. The animals hunker down, people pull cloaks tighter, fires stutter, then recover, but no one panics. They know this wind, they've met him before. Maybe not by name, but by rhythm. The shifting of seasons, the turning of breath. He turns to you. You can't build a world with just warmth, he says. You need pause, stillness, rest. He walks, if you can call it that, past you. His feet don't touch the ground. He glides like a rumor. Where he passes, snow flurries rise, briefly forming shapes. A bear, a tree, a woman with arms full of corn. "They feared me," he murmurs. "At first, until they learned I wasn't the end, just the moment before renewal." You look around now and see it. Winter isn't death. It's a holding place. A sacred stillness where things gather themselves before becoming again. You approach one of the lodges. Inside, a family sits around a fire. They're not talking, just being, sharing breath and space and silence like it's a feast. A child looks up and points at the ceiling, at a carved turtle on the wooden beam, its shell etched with the same 13 moons. The cycle continues, even here, especially here. You step back out into the cold, and now it feels different. Not biting, not cruel, just honest. This winter is a teacher, and in the distance you see a circle of tracks in the snow, deer maybe, or dancers. You're not sure. The wind glides beside you again. "I don't take life," he says. "I press pause." And then quieter. "Most forget to thank me for that." You nod, because suddenly it feels obvious. How many of the world's great stories were whispered in the cold, around firelight, with cheeks flushed from frost and hearts soft from slowing down? Without winter, nothing remembers how to begin again. The wind fades into the trees, and as the sun peeks gently over the rim of the horizon, you feel the cold ease, not gone, just gentler. A hand that releases after holding you still. You walk forward, not to leave winter behind, but to carry its lesson with you. And beneath the crust of frozen soil, far underfoot, the turtle is still, not sleeping, waiting. Because even the world needs a moment to rest before it grows again. You leave the valley quietly, as though stepping out of a library where the books are made of wind and frost. The cold doesn't chase you. It lingers politely, like a guest who knows they've overstayed but doesn't want to be rude. Each step forward is warmer, softer, not by much, but enough to feel like a welcome back. The path winds along a ridge now, and below you lies a land untouched by the lines you've grown used to seeing on maps. No borders, no fences, just rivers weaving like lazy serpents, forests flowing like spilled ink, and mountains sleeping in piles like great stone cats. You realize as you walk that you are standing in a place before property. Before measurements, before mine. A world mapped not by conquest, but by memory. And then, scattered across the landscape like pebbles dropped from someone's pocket, you begin to see maps, but not the kind you're used to. Painted on rocks, carved into bark. Etched in patterns of beads sewn onto deerskin. None of them feature straight lines or perfect angles. Instead, they mark places with meaning. A bend in the river where the fish always leap, a cliff where a lover once sang a song that moved the clouds, a grove where a grandmother danced herself back into youth. Each mark is a story, each story a location. You kneel by one rock, flattened and smoothed by time. A figure is etched on it, not of a man or an animal, but of a turtle again, its shell divided not in lunar cycles this time, but in places. Sacred ones, gathering ones, dangerous ones. This is not geography, it's experience. You suddenly understand. Long before compasses and coordinates, people carried their worlds in stories. Their maps weren't drawn to scale, they were drawn to memory. One carving catches your eye, 2 handprints side by side, one small, one large. Between them, a winding line that resembles a river but could also be a journey. You place your hand over the larger print. It fits imperfectly. A voice stirs behind you. Every footstep was once a name. You turn. A woman stands there, dressed in layers that shift between bark, fur, and woven light. Her eyes are old, not wrinkled, just deep. You don't ask who she is. You already know. She is a map keeper. The land remembers differently than people do, she says, stepping beside you. We forget. We redraw. The land just waits. You look out again across the vastness. There are no nations here, no capitals, just stories layered over each other like sediment. Borders, she adds, almost like a joke, are things humans invented to forget they share things. You think about your world, lines on screens, lines on paper, arguments over who belongs where and why. And here a map where belonging is marked by what you remember, not what you control. She kneels beside you and pulls something from her pouch, a piece of bark etched with tiny patterns of dots and curves. You realize it's a route, a guide, a portable map. Not of roads, but of relationships. This, she says, is how we told each other where to find medicine, where the berries ripen, where to go to cry and be alone, where to go to find someone who will listen. You trace one of the paths. It leads nowhere, or everywhere. You feel suddenly ashamed of GPS. The map keeper stands, brushes off her knees. We didn't walk in straight lines, she says. We walked where the stories took us. And then she's gone. Not with drama, just not there anymore. The breeze forgets her name immediately, but you don't. You sit for a while watching the wind play with grass, and you realize something. In your world, maps tell you where to go. Here, they remind you why you went in the first place. You stand, and far beneath the ground, the turtle shifts again, just enough to remind you that even places move. Even the earth has a path. You just have to walk it slow enough to... The hills flatten now, rolling out like a bed freshly made by a dream you haven't had yet. The sky stretches wide overhead, impossibly open, so blue it feels fictional, like it's trying too hard. There's a lightness in the air, not just in the wind, but in your chest. Something is coming. You don't know what, but the ground knows, the trees know, and then you hear them. Footsteps, slow at first, deep and distant like thunder wearing soft shoes. Then, more, heavier, closer. The ground beneath you trembles ever so slightly, not enough to frighten, just enough to demand attention. Over the ridge they come, massive, shaggy, alive with purpose. Bison. A sea of them. Dark waves of muscle and horn sweeping across the prairie like a memory that refuses to fade. You stand perfectly still as they pass, not out of fear, but out of reverence. They don't see you. Or maybe they do, and they've simply decided you're part of the landscape now. There's no panic in them, no chaos, just movement, as if the land itself is shifting from one chapter into another. You walk parallel for a while, matching their rhythm. You begin to feel it in your bones, the ancient beat of hooves pounding earth in time with the sky's heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom. This isn't just a herd. This is a nation. Once, tens of millions of bison moved across this land, so many that their breath changed the wind. Their migration wasn't aimless. It was clockwork, a ritual, a song written in steps, and behind them, always close, the people, the Lakota, the Cheyenne, the Comanche, the Kiowa, countless others whose lives moved to the rhythm of the bison's hooves. The bison gave everything: meat, hide, bone, tools, warmth, glue, rope, stories. They weren't just animals, they were relatives. You see flashes in the distance now, campsites, hunting parties, children with feathers woven into braids chasing each other between teepee poles. A world balanced, not perfect, but whole. And then the world stutters, the bison hesitate, the land goes silent. You see something on the horizon, something wrong. Metal glinting where it shouldn't. Lines drawn not in the dirt, but with rails. The metal horse is coming, and the bison know. You turn slowly, and in the distance, the train creeps across the land, whistling once like an apology no one asked for. It's fast, loud, unnatural, and behind it, everything changes. Guns, fences, towns, slaughter. By the late 1800s, only a few hundred bison would remain, from millions to hundreds, in a single lifetime. Not because of natural cycles, but because someone decided this land was only valuable once it was empty. You stand in the silence after the train passes. There are no more hooves, just dust. A few feathers drift by, caught on wind that can't remember where to go anymore. You feel something like mourning, but heavier. Like the air itself is grieving. Historians still argue over why the bison were wiped out so quickly. Some cite economics, some say overhunting. Others whisper about war, not against animals, but against the people who needed them. It's hard to say which is worse, that it happened or that we expected it to. You kneel, press your hand to the earth. The ground is warm, tired, patient. It remembers the hooves, and so do you. Then, faintly, a sound, a low rumble. You turn, one bison, old, scarred, magnificent. He stands at the edge of the horizon watching you. His eyes don't accuse, they don't forgive, they remember. And then he turns and walks on. You follow not because you think you can fix anything, but because some paths deserve to be walked again. Not out of nostalgia, but out of respect. And beneath you, far under prairie and stone, the turtle exhales slowly, as if holding space for what was lost, and for what might return, and if we remember how to listen. The path narrows now, as if the land is thinking, deciding how much more to share. The grass brushes your legs like an old friend tugging at your sleeve, slowing you down, whispering, "Don't rush this part." You come to a grove of trees, low and wide, their trunks twisted like dancers mid-step. Something about them feels different, intentional. They lean in toward each other, their branches entwined above you, forming a kind of archway, a tunnel, a threshold. You step through, and suddenly everything smells sweet, earthy, warm, faintly floral, like cedar and memory stirred together in a pot. At the heart of this grove, you find them, the beads, scattered across a blanket of moss, shimmering in sunlight that filters through the trees like curious fingers. Purple, white, black, some faded, some sharp. Each one is no bigger than a fingernail, but together they hum with power. Wampum. You've heard the word before, in textbooks maybe, as something traded, something worn. But no one ever told you that wampum wasn't about wealth. It was about memory. A bead for a promise, a strand for a treaty, a belt for a story so important it had to be carried in your hands. You kneel beside one of the belts, long, woven tight, the white beads forming a pattern of 2 lines running side by side down the center, not touching, never crossing. You remember the meaning now, the 2-row wampum, a symbol of respect, that of coexistence. 2 paths, one for the indigenous people, one for the newcomers, separate but equal. Sailing down the river of life together, each steering their own canoe, neither interfering with the other. That was the idea, anyway. You run your fingers over the beads, each one cool and deliberate. You imagine the hands that made them, steady, patient, weaving not just shells, but agreements, the kind that were meant to outlive generations, the kind that didn't. Nearby, a woman sits beneath one of the twisted trees. She's old, but not fragile. Her eyes are sharp, like she sees through you rather than at you. "You know," she says, not unkindly, "people think these were just for decoration or trade." She picks up a string of beads, holds them in the sunlight. "These were our books, our libraries, our laws, our ceremonies, our histories, and we never lost them. We just stopped being asked to read them." She gestures to a belt woven in a circle, purple at the center, white at the edges, like a ripple frozen in time. "This one," she says, "is a mourning belt, for when someone dies, for when something ends." You look around at the other belts. Some are worn, some new. One is fraying slightly at the edge. It hurts more than you expected. "Do people still make them?" you ask. She smiles. "We never stopped." Then she leans in. "But they're not just to remember what happened. They're to remember what mattered." You sit with that for a moment. The way a single bead can hold a promise. The way a pattern can carry a law more enduring than ink on paper. The way memory isn't just something you carry in your head, but in your hands. Historians still debate the accuracy of wampum. Some call it symbolic. Others insist on physical proof. "Show us the meaning," they demand, forgetting that meaning doesn't always come with documentation. Sometimes it comes with trust. You stand slowly, careful not to disturb the beads. The woman is gone now, but the belts remain. You pick one up, not to take, but to feel. It hums gently in your palms like it recognizes you. Or maybe it's asking if you recognize it, and suddenly you remember something simple and painful and beautiful. Not all history was meant to be read. Some of it was meant to be held. The wind stirs the beads slightly. They clink together softly, like a conversation too old for words. You step back out of the grove, beads still glowing in your thoughts, and deep below, where stories are cradled in stone, the turtle shifts again, just enough to keep the promise. You emerge from the grove with the feeling that something important just happened. like waking from a dream that leaves a taste in your mouth, though you can't say what flavor. The trees seem taller now, not because they grew, but because you did. The wind has shifted again. It's slower now, thicker, like molasses sliding over the edges of the day. It carries the smell of ash, wood, and something older, memory, burned and rising. You walk toward it. The land flattens into a broad field ringed with pine and spruce, all standing watch like sentinels. In the center, a circle of stone benches, blackened logs, and one still smoking fire pit. You sit. No one is here, but you don't feel alone. The smoke curls upward like a finger beckoning the past to come closer. And then you hear him, a voice, not booming, not soft, just steady, like someone who knows that every word matters and uses them accordingly. He begins to tell a story. You can't see him, but you feel him, somewhere in the smoke, in the crackling of the coals, in the pause between one breeze and the next. He tells you of battles, not the kind you read about in textbooks with dates and generals and maps, but other battles, one between the Nighthawk and the Wind Woman over who would govern the dusk, another between the Fire Bear and the River Twins who fought so long that mountains grew just to get away from them. You don't ask if they're true. You don't need to. They're true in the way that stories are true, not in fact, but in function. He goes on. He tells of a man who tried to trap the northern lights in a basket just so he could light his fire in style. Didn't work. Turned his house into a snow globe for 27 years. He tells of a woman who baked a pie so perfect the seasons pause just to smell it. That story ends with a very smug raccoon. You laugh, quietly. The fire cracks. And then the voice says something you don't expect. Some stories were never meant to be told in daylight. You feel that in your spine. Because here in this space, it's not about what happened. It's about what the telling does. These stories aren't just entertainment. They're tools. They build frameworks of values. They preserve boundaries between pride and arrogance, bravery and foolishness, the sacred and the convenient. In this smoke-laced night, the line between myth and memory thins. And that's when you notice the shadows. They lean forward, not threatening, just listening. As if even they want to hear the ending. You realize something strange. This storyteller, he's not just speaking to you, he's speaking through you. Your ears are just the latest to catch these words. The story has been passed from mouth to ear to heart like a drumbeat kept alive across 1,000 winters. And now, you're part of it. The story continues through you. You look into the fire, and for a second the flames shift. Not randomly, but with intention. You see shapes, a turtle, a woman falling through sky, twin footprints in fresh snow, a hand made of beads, a bison's eye. You blink and it's gone, but not really. The images settle behind your eyes like embers tucked into coals ready to reignite later. The voice fades now, like breath into the cold. You sit in the silence that follows, not empty, but full, like a room that still echoes long after the music ends. You rise, and the smoke parts to let you pass. The stories cling to your skin like the scent of cedar and ash. They won't wash off easily. You're not meant to forget them. You step out of the circle and feel the world again, solid, wind-brushed, waiting. And beneath you, deep under the fire pit, deep under the dirt, the turtle shifts. Just slightly, as if it too was listening. The trail moves again, winding like thought, hesitant, layered, spiraling towards something half-remembered. The air is warmer here, tinged with sweetness. You breathe in, and for the first time in a long while, you smell corn. Not the butter-drenched movie theater kind. No, this is deeper, earthier, roasted, ancient. You follow the scent until you find yourself in a clearing, low, sunlit, ringed by tall stalks swaying in the wind like old women whispering gossip between dances. And at the center of the clearing, corn, but not planted. Standing. Tall ears, husks pulled back like robes, their roots not buried, but walking. Corn with feet. It sounds ridiculous, but here now it feels absolutely normal. Of course the corn used to walk. How else would it have found the people? You sit in the dirt and watch. They move slowly, the corn people, stepping cautiously across the field, their tassels like long golden braids. They are neither plant nor human, but something between old spirits in vegetable disguise. The story returns to you. In many indigenous traditions, Haudenosaunee, Cherokee, Hopi, and more, corn wasn't just food. She was a being. One of the three sisters, corn, bean, and squash. But Corn was the eldest, the teacher, the provider, the one who walked toward humanity when it was still deciding if it deserved to be fed. You remember a version where Corn once literally walked across the land, choosing where to root herself. The people didn't plant her. She found them. And only when they grew careless, greedy, impatient, disrespectful, did she stop walking. Only then did Corn demand to be sown, harvested, earned. You reach out to touch one of the stalks. It pauses, then leans into your palm. Not in fear, in recognition. The wind picks up, not harsh, just stern. Like a grandmother clearing her throat before giving you the talk. The corn people stop walking. One turns to face you. Its kernels dark gold, deep set like eyes with long memories. It doesn't speak. It rustles. And somehow you understand. I gave my body so you could live, and you forgot my name. Oof. You feel that land in your stomach like a missed meal. You look down, ashamed, then up again, and the corn is still there, but now you see things woven into their roots. Fish bones, deer sinew, bits of pottery. Offerings. Evidence of a relationship, long ruptured. Because this wasn't agriculture. This was kinship. And when you sever kinship, something always dies. You hear the old voice again, the storyteller from the smoke circle, like an echo bouncing back. Not everything you eat is food, some of it is story. The breeze moves through the stalks, and the corn people begin walking again. Not away, just onward, like they always have. Like they always will, if we let them. Historians have tried to explain the three sisters as just a clever planting technique. Corn as support, beans for nitrogen, squash to shade weeds, which is true, but also painfully incomplete. Because they weren't just farming companions, they were family. They braided their roots together. They grew best in community. You walk alongside the stalks now, your footsteps matching theirs. You feel their rhythm, slow, grounded, generous. The kind of tempo the modern world forgot somewhere between fast food and faster Wi-Fi. You realize suddenly that walking corn wasn't the fantasy. Forgetting that it once did, that was the fantasy. The corn stops one last time. One stalk turns and places something in your hand. A single kernel. Alive. A seed not just for growing, but for remembering. You don't pocket it, you hold it like a promise. The corn continues into the tall grass, disappearing one by one like sunset behind clouds. You stand alone again, but not empty. And far beneath you, in the root layer of memory and breath, the turtle shifts, just enough to let the seeds sink deeper. The kernel still sits in your palm, warm as breath and heavier than its size should allow. Not with mass, but with memory. You curl your fingers around it, gently, like a whisper you don't want to crush. The landscape changes again. The sun dims, not disappearing, but dipping low enough to cast long shadows that sway like dancers stretching before a ceremony. The ground flattens into a broad, open plain, and in the distance, drums begin. Low, steady, measured, thump, 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 thump. They echo across the earth, not from a stage or a speaker, but from the very ground itself. Your feet feel it before your ears do. You follow the sound until you find them, the circle. Hundreds of people moving as one, some dancing, others watching, and many simply being. Feathers, beads, paint, laughter, tears, all swirling together in a celebration that feels less like a performance and more like a heartbeat turned inside out. You've arrived at a ghost dance, and it's nothing like you imagined. It's not eerie, not sad. It's hopeful, fierce, defiant, a fire wrapped in silence, a prayer dressed in movement. You watch the dancers as they circle. Clockwise, always clockwise, because time in this place doesn't move forward. It returns. You see faces young and old, painted and plain, every one of them focused. Not on spectacle, but on memory. Some weep, some smile, many do both at once. And the song that rises with the dance, it doesn't rhyme, it doesn't beg. It remembers. It remembers the loss of land, the silencing of languages, the fences, the treaties, the removals, the boarding schools, the names changed and the names erased, but it also remembers the before, and it dares to believe in the after. You sit at the edge of the circle. A woman next to you offers no greeting, just hands you a shawl, not to keep warm, but to remind you that you are covered here. You wrap it around your shoulders and let the drumming carry your heartbeat until you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. This dance was born from despair, yes. In the late 1800s, the ghost dance spread like wildfire through the West, a vision that promised, if danced correctly, that suffering would end. The bison would return. The ancestors would rise. The white man's world would fall away. Historians call it millenarianism, a big word for desperate hope with choreography. The US government called it dangerous, so they outlawed it. They feared it, the rhythm, the unity, the memory. And at Wounded Knee, they answered a dance with bullets. But here, now, the dance continues, because memory can't be killed. The circle turns, and you begin to see something. The dancers aren't alone. Figures shimmer beside them. Ghosts, yes, but not in chains or sorrow. These are spirits in full regalia, faces lifted to the stars, dancing with the living. Grandmothers, warriors, children, elders. Their feet don't touch the ground, but their joy does. You realize now why it's called the ghost dance. Not because it summons the dead, but because it refuses to forget them. One of the dancers breaks from the circle and walks toward you. Sweat on his brow, determination in his jaw. He extends a hand. You hesitate, but only for a moment. Then you take it. He pulls you into the circle. The drums grow louder, not because they change volume, but because you've changed distance. You are in the story now, not watching it, not reading it, dancing it. Your feet stumble. That's okay. Everyone does at first. Someone takes your other hand. The circle welcomes you. No one asks for your name, just your presence, just your willingness to move and remember. You don't know the steps, but the earth does. It carries you. You close your eyes. And for a moment, you forget you were ever anything but this. You dance until the line between past and future disappears. Until all that's left is the sound of feet, the beat of drums, and a sky full of spirits who've waited patiently for someone to join the rhythm. When you finally step out of the circle, it is not because you're done. It's because you've been given something. And deep beneath your feet, under the drums, under the dance floor of the earth, the turtle shifts again, slow, steady, in rhythm. The drumming fades behind you, not ending, just softening like a heartbeat slipping into dream space. You walk away from the circle slowly, your shoulders still carrying the weight of rhythm. Your feet hum with memory, and your hands tingle like they're still being held. The land changes again. Not dramatically, just a gentle slope upward, the trees thinning until you stand beneath open sky. But this sky is different. It doesn't stretch. It looms. Heavy with the scent of storm, the kind that prickles the hairs on your neck before a single drop falls. And then a rumble. Low. Distant. Too long to be a cloud shifting. Too alive to be ignored. You turn your eyes to the horizon just as a shadow moves across the sky. Not small. Not fast. Not bird. Thunderbird. Again, but this time it's not flying high above, it's descending. Its wingspan stretches from cloud to cloud, feathers trailing bolts of lightning like threads in a woven storm. Its eyes are the color of bruised sky. And when it opens its beak, thunder doesn't follow, it precedes. Boom. The sound hits you in the chest. Not like noise, but like reminder. This is the second time you've seen it, but now you understand more. This isn't just a creature, this is a judge. It circles slowly over the ridge as you climb higher. You feel the wind pick up, tearing at your clothes, at your thoughts, testing your balance, testing you. Then the Thunderbird dives. Straight toward the mountaintop, you run. Not from it, but after it. There's no fear, just urgency. Like a story demanding to be told before you forget the ending. You crest the summit and see it, perched on a great, jagged rock that splits the sky. Its feathers ripple with electricity, each one humming with potential. Rain starts to fall, not in drops, but in patterns. Circles. Spirals. Like sky-written glyphs. You step forward, and it speaks. But not in words. In images. You see storms flooding dry lands, first in rage, then in renewal. You see trees split by lightning and regrowing stronger. You see power not as force, but as responsibility. You blink and it's showing you your world. Cities blinking like circuit boards. Oceans choked with what we've left behind. People scrolling so fast they forget what the sky looks like without notifications. And you feel it ask you, not angrily, not even impatiently, just ask, what will you do with power? Not theirs, yours. Because everyone carries storm somewhere inside, a pause. The Thunderbird lifts its wings and for a breathless moment you see everything. The stars beyond the clouds, the rivers etched into the earth like veins, the turtle's shell stretching beneath it all, cracked and tired and still holding. Then the Thunderbird takes flight again, one great beat of wings and the wind drops to its knees. Lightning flashes, not as warning, but as punctuation, and the bird is gone. The storm clears almost immediately, like it was never meant to stay, just meant to deliver a message. You stand there on the mountain, soaked, hair wild, eyes wide. You've just been seen and somehow forgiven. The air tastes new now, ozone and opportunity. You descend slowly, the rocks beneath your feet no longer sharp but grounded. Historians, of course, dismiss the thunderbird as folklore, a cultural metaphor, a regional invention, but they never stood here. They never felt the question thunder ask you, and they certainly never heard the wind whisper, "Power isn't taken, it's returned." You keep walking, every step still echoing with the weight of wings, and far below, deep under the storm-scored ridges and root-bound trails, the turtle shifts again, one slow breath, one silent prayer, and the world holds. The storm has passed, but the world hasn't quite settled. You feel it in the way the clouds hang low, not heavy, just contemplative, like they're rethinking something. The air hums with aftershock, not destruction. Recalibration. The trail leads into woods again, taller this time, denser, trees like columns, rising so high you wonder if they ever run out of trunk. The canopy closes above you, and the light dims into a filtered green. It smells like damp bark, crushed leaves, and something else. Something alive. You pause because you're being watched. Not by creatures or spirits this time, but by the forest itself. The trees lean toward you slightly, their branches twitch just barely. Their leaves rustle with purpose, not wind, and you swear you can hear something. Whispers. Not words. Not language. Just presence. You step carefully into the clearing and place your hand against a tree. It is warm. Not metaphorically. Literally. And then you hear it. Not outside, inside, deep inside your chest, like an echo finding its way out. We are the old ones. The voice isn't male or female, it's green. You close your eyes and suddenly it's like the forest is playing memories for you. You see roots stretching underground for miles, touching, intertwining, communicating. You see warnings passed from tree to tree when danger comes, fire, disease, chainsaws. You see one tree sacrificing its nutrients for another, because kinship matters more than competition. You open your eyes, stunned. These trees don't just exist, they remember, they talk. Science is only just catching up, mycorrhizal networks they call it. Fungi acting like the forest's nervous system. Underground messages, slow, patient, effective. But the people who lived here always knew. They listened. They asked the trees for permission before taking bark or sap. They left tobacco at the roots. They sang before they cut. They knew these weren't resources. They were relatives. The whispers grow louder now. Still not English. Still not words. But you understand them anyway. The feeling behind them is clear. You have forgotten how to listen, and it's true. You remember school lessons where trees were labeled oxygen machines, lumber sources, shade providers, all functions, no personalities, no stories. But now standing here, surrounded by beings older than empires, you feel the arrogance of that framing. The trees don't resent you. They're too old for that. But they're tired of growing in silence, of being seen only when dying, of screaming in drought while people argue about gas prices. You walk deeper into the forest. The moss softens your steps. The air thickens. You come to a tree that's wider than your house, its bark twisted like a braid, its trunk hollow at the base. Inside, just barely visible in the dim green light, are carvings, symbols, hands, turtles, eyes, and words, written in a spiral, wrapping around the inside of the tree like a secret waiting for the right listener. You lean in. We do not forget who cuts us. We do not hate who burns us, but we mourn who ignores us. You place your palm on the message, and it glows, just briefly, then fades, and you swear just behind your shoulder, a tree sighs. You don't turn around, you just listen. Because maybe that's what this whole story has been about. Not answers, not action, just attention. And you give it now, fully humbly. You bow your head, say nothing, but everything in you says, thank you, then you walk on. And beneath the forest floor, through root and stone and stories long buried, the turtle shifts, slow, patient, listening. You walk slower now, not from exhaustion, but from something deeper. Respect. The kind of pace you take through a library or a place of mourning. The forest behind you is still whispering, and though the words have faded, their echo lives in your bones. Ahead, the landscape shifts again. There are no signs, no trail markers, just a gentle slope leading downward into a hollow. At the center, a low fire, crackling in a ring of smooth stones, its smoke curling upward like it's thinking. And beside the fire, sitting on a log worn smooth by time, is a man. He doesn't look at you, just stares into the flames like he's been watching them for 1,000 years. You sit beside him without asking, because some silences are invitations. His hands are rough, calloused in the way that only comes from building, not destroying. You notice ink-stained fingers, leather-bound pouches on his belt, and a small stone blade carved so perfectly it hums when the wind touches it. When he finally speaks, it's not with grandeur, just truth. I used to fight, now I teach. His voice is quiet, low, the kind of tone that doesn't ask to be heard, it expects it. He was once a warrior, not in the Hollywood sense, not all feathers and fury, but in the real sense, a protector. Someone who knew when to raise a spear and when to raise a child. And now? Now, he tells stories. He teaches the young ones to make arrows and understand dreams. He passes on words older than paper. He guides hands through beadwork, through fire-making, through the sacred art of watching without interrupting. You ask him how he knows what to teach. He chuckles, a deep sound like wood splitting in winter. The land tells me. I just listen better than I used to. You ask if he misses the fight. His face goes still, then a slow nod. Sometimes, when I see the lies dressed as truth, when I see history told by mouths that never tasted what it meant. He pokes the fire with a stick, then adds, but the blade dulls. The voice sharpens. He lifts a pouch and pulls out a small object. It looks like a simple rock, but when he turns it, the firelight reveals etchings, lines, symbols like the spiral of a story winding inward. He places it in your hand. This is a map, not of land, of values. You stare at it. It's heavier than it looks, not just in weight, in meaning. He continues, a warrior protects borders. A teacher protects stories. Guess which one lasts longer? That one lands. You ask what he protects now. He smiles. Memory, and the right to tell it ourselves. Behind you, the fire crackles. You look around and realize this isn't just a campfire. This is a classroom, a lodge of learning, not the kind with desks, but with shadows that lean in to listen. You ask if he's ever afraid the stories will be lost. His answer comes quickly. They've tried to erase us for 500 years, and yet here you are, sitting in the smoke, holding a stone full of memory. A pause. Then softer. We don't vanish. We adapt. The smoke rises. You hand the stone back, but he shakes his head. Keep it. You've been listening. And that's when it hits you. This entire walk through forests, dances, storms, seeds hasn't been random. It's been lessons. You've been the student all along, not in a school, in a story. You rise. Not because the moment ends, but because you've heard enough. For now. He doesn't say goodbye. He just nods. As you step away, you realize the fire still burns behind you. It always will. For the next listener, the next learner, the next warrior-turned-teacher who refuses to let the flame go out. And far below the fire pit, nestled beneath roots and rock and remembrance, the turtle shifts. One breath, one lesson deeper. The ground firms beneath your feet, less wild now, more worn. You follow a path that feels traveled, not paved, but purposeful. You can almost hear the shuffle of footsteps before you, the rustle of hides, the creak of wooden frames, the whisper of trade carried on the backs of stories and fur, and then you see it. A long clearing, wide and curved like a river that forgot to fill with water. On either side, there are people, not tourists. Traders. Beaded bags laid out on blankets, piles of animal pelts folded neatly, each one labeled with a language you don't know but feel like you almost understand. Iron tools, clay pipes, bottles of red pigment, wampum belts with new patterns. You've arrived at a trade encampment, a gathering where nations meet, not to fight, but to exchange. Goods, news, kinship. There's no shouting, no bargaining, just quiet conversations in dozens of languages. A woman offers smoked fish in exchange for obsidian arrowheads. A boy accepts a carved flute, then plays it immediately, giggling when the first note surprises a nearby goose. It feels less like shopping and more like storytelling through objects. You walk slowly, passing stall after stall. Someone hands you a strip of dried berries wrapped in bark. Someone else slips a strand of beaded fringe into your pocket without asking. And then you see it, a coat. But not just any coat. It's stitched together from beaver pelts, trimmed with red cloth that glows even in the shade, buttons that gleam like they were made by the moon. A capote, the kind worn during the fur trade era. You touch the fabric, it feels like a contradiction. Warm, heavy, beautiful, and yet stitched from something lost. The man selling it nods at you. French fashion, native survival. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. They took our land, but they loved our style. A pause. So we made it a weapon. You try the coat on. It fits. Too well, because this isn't just about clothes, it's about how indigenous nations adapted fiercely. How they turned the fur trade into leverage, how they learned foreign languages, foreign currencies, foreign greed, and still kept their own center intact. For a while anyway. You walk past another stall where someone is painting on birch bark with ochre and crushed blueberries. She looks up and says, "This is how we made maps. This is how we sent messages. This is how we wrote back." She gestures to a scroll half finished. You recognize the curves, the shell, the spiral, the turtle. Even here, in the middle of commerce, the story continues. And then a shift. The chatter grows quieter. A trader carefully folds a flag. Another covers her beaded moccasins with a piece of cloth. There's tension. You look around, and you see why. Soldiers in the distance. Red coats, and then blue, and then gray. Different eras layered over each other like ghostly photographs, bleeding into one another. Colonial powers, French, British, American. All of them came. All of them promised. All of them priced what could not be priced. They brought treaties that tasted like ash, diseases wrapped in blankets, metal horses that outran the deer, and always, they brought numbers. Measurements, surveys, acres, and debts. You step away from the market now, walking back toward the tree line, the shadows wrapping around you like a shawl. And as you do, you hear a voice, soft and close. They thought we were being bought, but we were learning their game. And some of us are still playing it. You turn, but no one's there. Just the trees. And a single coin, old and dull, sitting on the path. You pick it up. It's been hammered flat, reshaped into a turtle. You smile. Because adaptation isn't surrender, it's strategy, it's survival. It's still happening. You slip the turtle coin into your pocket, and deep beneath the forest floor, under trade routes and trails, under stolen pelts and broken promises, the turtle shifts. Quiet, unbought, unbroken. The coin feels warm in your pocket, not metallic, not heavy, just present, like it knows where you've been, like it's listening. The trail bends again, narrow, sun-dappled, but somehow sharper now. The trees are farther apart, the wind more cautious. There's something ahead that the land is bracing for. You step through a break in the trees and arrive at the edge of a clearing. At its center, a long wooden table, empty. Surrounding it, 12 chairs, uneven. Some carved, others plain. One made entirely of bones, animal probably, maybe. Another, a stump with initials etched deep into its bark. But every seat faces the table, and on the table itself, paper. Stacks of it. Rolled scrolls, folded pages, bound leather books with fraying edges. Every page brims with writing. Names, marks, X's, seals melted and smeared. Treaties. You approach slowly. No one tells you to stop. No one needs to. The silence here is exact. You reach for the topmost document. Your fingers hesitate. Not because it's fragile, but because you know what it cost. It's a treaty between nations, between people who spoke of peace and people who defined it in ink. Promises carved in foreign language, witnessed by strangers, often translated by someone who only half understood both sides. You read, "We agree to share the land in peace." Then below, for as long as the rivers flow and the grass grows. Your heart skips. You've heard that phrase before. Romantic, permanent, hollow. Because somewhere below the poetry and smaller script are exceptions, amendments, hidden weapons, and a date. You know what came after? The treaty wasn't kept because treaties often weren't meant to be kept. They were meant to buy time. Time for settlement, for expansion, for forgetting. You move to the next page. Another treaty, another broken promise. Some signed under duress. Some under hunger. Some with hands still bleeding from forced relocation. Each one a piece of paper that tried to contain a people who weren't meant to be contained. One chair creaks behind you. You turn. A man sits there now, dressed plainly, buckskin, beaded armband, a single braid down his back. He doesn't look angry, just tired. He doesn't speak, just nods to the paper in your hands. You whisper, unsure why. You sign this? He doesn't answer, not out loud, but something in his eyes says yes, and also no, because for many who signed, it wasn't a choice. It was the lesser of two betrayals. Another voice joins, this one a woman, standing behind the chair made of bones. Her hair is streaked with gray, her arms crossed. They called it agreement. We called it survival. Another chair fills, then another. Soon the table is surrounded by witnesses, not ghosts, not exactly, just people who remember, people who were there, people who felt the weight of a pen that never drew justice. You place the page back down, gently, and in that moment you feel the truth ripple through the clearing. A treaty is not just paper, it is a scar. And scars don't fade because we pretend they healed. They fade when they're acknowledged. When someone says, yes, this happened, yes, it mattered. You step back from the table. The seated figures watch you. One nods, another closes her eyes. The wind passes through again, lifting the papers slightly, just enough to whisper their words back into the world. You leave the clearing, and as you pass beyond its edge, the air shifts. Heavier, fuller, more awake. Beneath your feet, under all those unsigned apologies and broken lines of ink, the turtle stirs. A small shudder, a slow breath, and a silent vow to remember every name they tried to forget. The trees grow sparse now, the land barer than before, as if even the forest needed a moment to recover from the weight of what was signed and what was never truly honored. The soil crunches underfoot, dry and pale like the world's breath has been held too long. And then you see it. Bones. Everywhere. Scattered across the plain like snowflakes that forgot how to melt. Skulls, ribs, spines, massive and sun-bleached. A field of bison remains stretching into the horizon. The silence is louder here than any storm you've ever heard. The kind of silence that arrives only after great violence has passed through and nothing yet has dared to speak its name. You walk slowly, careful not to disturb the past. But it's already disturbed. A single skull watches you from the center of the field. Its eye sockets wide, not in horror, but in witness. You meet its gaze and you feel it, full and sharp. We were not just animals, we were nations. There are no dancers here, no elders, no drummers, just the ghosts of hooves and breath and the sound of thunder that once came from the earth, not the sky. You sit beside the skull, knees pulled to your chest, and try to imagine the disappearance, not of one, of millions. In the 1800s, they covered the plains like rivers of muscle and bone. You could ride for days and still hear their breathing. Then came the rifles, the railroads, the greed, the strategy. Because it wasn't just about meat, it was about removal. The bison were food, shelter, identity, ceremony. For countless tribes, they were the center of the wheel. And so to cut that wheel's hub, just take the herd. White men shot them from trains for sport, let them rot, piled their skulls high for photographs, celebrated the bones like trophies in a war they never formally declared. You stand. You walk among the bones, you find a femur the length of your arm, a rib cage wide enough to hold the sky, and then as if remembering its own shape, the wind begins to howl, not with fury, with a morning wind. You taste it, salt and ash, prairie and blood, a voice, soft, masculine, cracked like an old drum, speaks behind you. We danced for them every year. We called them our brothers. We thanked them before the arrow left the string. You turn. An elder stands there, barefoot, hair tied with strips of sinew. He carries nothing but a carved pipe and a sliver of old hide folded into his palm. He kneels beside the skull, not to cry, to pray. You don't hear the words. You're not meant to. But you feel them, and so do the bones, because some prayers don't rise to the sky. They sink into soil, into memory, into the marrow of whatever's left behind. He finishes, stands slowly, looks at you, looks at you. They're coming back, you know. You blink, you blink. The bison, not like before, not everywhere, but some. Enough, because memory has legs. He smiles, slow and weary. They tried to make the land forget, but the land never signed their treaties. Then he turns. Walks off into the bones, fades like smoke. You stay a little longer, long enough to hear what silence sounds like after forgiveness. And when you finally leave the field, the skull still watches, not accusing, just remembering. And far beneath, under the bleached bones and broken promises, the turtle shifts, one deep exhale, one step closer to healing. The bones fade behind you, swallowed gently by wind and grass. You keep walking, though now your steps feel heavier. Not tired, carrying. like your feet remember too much to move quickly. The land flattens again, but this time it's different. Unnatural. The grass is clipped, the soil compacted. A long, narrow trench runs beside you, metal rails hammered into wooden ties, stretching into the distance like a sentence that forgot how to end. You've reached the path of the metal horse. A train, yes, but more than that. A symbol, a wound, a warning dressed in iron. You pause beside the tracks. Your reflection stares back at you from the shiny rail. You're distorted, stretched, like history seen from the wrong side of a window. And then, faint at first, a rumble. You feel it before you hear it. The ground vibrates beneath your feet. A breeze kicks up. The sound grows. Chug, chug. Roar. The train emerges from the horizon like a beast that never learned how to stop. Black smoke billows from its mouth, curling into the sky like a forgotten language. It doesn't slow. It never does. The train charges past, each car a blur of wood and metal, names carved into the sides, forts, cities, dead rivers. You glimpse shadows inside the windows. Settlers, soldiers, surveyors, men with maps and ledgers and boots that never asked permission. The air is sucked forward as the last car vanishes, then silence. Except it isn't silence, it's aftermath. You sit on a nearby stone, your ears ringing with the ghost of engines. The railroad brought more than people. It brought speed, and speed does something to memory. It crushes it, flattens it, paves over it. Where once there were trails guided by hoof and star, now there were timetables, steel tracks, schedules written by strangers. The buffalo couldn't outrun it. Neither could the people. Entire towns sprung up and burned down in the wake of it. Cultures were erased by the time zones imposed to coordinate its stops. And somewhere in the archives of ambition, someone wrote, progress. But what they meant was control. You stand again and follow the tracks. You walk for miles, past hills that once held teepee circles, past rivers renamed after generals, past signs that no longer mean what they once meant. And then, just off the path, you see it. A single teepee, old, empty, still standing. Its poles are weathered, the canvas stitched with patterns you don't recognize. Around it, wild sage, feathers, a broken mirror. Inside, silence. You step in and find carvings on the central pole, lines, spirals, a turtle, and one word written faintly in a mix of syllabics and English. Still here. Your throat tightens because somehow, despite everything the metal horse brought, relocation, destruction, disconnection, something endured, not untouched, not unscathed, but undefeated. You leave the teepee. The train is long gone, but the tracks remain, splitting the earth like a scar. You place your hand on the rail, and it's still warm. Not from the sun, from history. And far below, beneath sleepers and steel, through gravel and ghost towns, the turtle shifts once more, slow, steady, resisting extinction with every breath. The tracks stretch on behind you, slicing across the land like a thought someone never finished. You step off them. The earth softens under your feet again, as if it's grateful to feel you walking barefoot instead of on iron. The air grows still. You've entered a different kind of silence now, not sacred, not expectant, muted. Like someone pressed a hand over the land's mouth. Ahead, a low building rises out of the earth. Not ancient, not ceremonial. Just plain. Brick, square windows, doors that don't belong here. The grass around it doesn't grow right. The light here feels filtered. Off. You don't need a sign. You know what this is, a residential school. You stand at the edge for a long time, like it's radioactive. It is, in a way, haunted by more than ghosts. Haunted by policy. Haunted by the intention to erase. You walk toward it. The doors creak when they open. Not dramatically, just enough to suggest they didn't expect company. Inside, long hallways, peeling paint, broken floorboards, and shoes. Tiny ones, lined up against the wall, some missing laces, some with names still written in fading ink on the soles. You don't move them. You don't touch them. You can barely look at them. The air here smells of dust, soap, old paper, and grief sealed into the walls like lead paint. You step down the hallway and each footfall feels like a trespass. You pass classrooms with chalk still on the boards, English words scrawled over indigenous names. Obey, sit, work, speak only English. The desks are small, too small. You pass dormitories with iron-framed beds, all aligned too perfectly, a stack of Bibles, a broken doll, a silence that is no longer passive. It presses into your chest. And then you reach the back, a chapel, still intact. The stained glass glows unnaturally. You step in, and suddenly the silence becomes weight. Not metaphor, literal. Your shoulders sag, your knees ache. You kneel not because you choose to, but because you can't not. You feel it then. Children, their memories, their haircut, their clothes taken, their languages punished, their songs buried under hymns that never knew the land they were sung on, and some never left. You feel their presence, not angry, but expectant. They are still waiting, not for revenge. If for acknowledgement, you whisper, "I see you." The air shifts. A breeze moves through the chapel, though no windows are open. It carries the scent of sweetgrass, smoke, rain, childhood. One by one, small voices echo, not clearly. Just syllables. Names that were taken, now spoken again. You stand. Walk outside. Behind the building is a small cemetery, unmarked, unfenced. Dozens of tiny depressions in the soil. One has a feather, one has a toy horse, one has nothing at all. You kneel again, you place the turtle coin you were given earlier in the grass. It doesn't vanish, but it settles like it belongs there, like it's telling them someone is still listening. The truth of these schools isn't debated anymore. The evidence is there. But still, some resist the story. Some say it was a different time. Some say don't look back. But, looking away is how it happened. You walk back down the hallway. The shoes are still there, waiting. And when you leave the building, the light feels different. Sharper, older, angrier, but clearer. You step back onto the earth, and beneath the floorboards of forgotten dorms, under chalk and stolen syllables, the turtle shifts. One mournful breath, holding stories that were never supposed to be silenced, but are finally being heard. The light outside feels harsher now. Not in color, but in truth. It doesn't blind you. It reveals you. Your shadow stretches longer than it should. You leave the school behind, but it follows, in your shoulders, in your breath, in the way the land beneath your feet feels thinner, like sorrow has worn it down. You walk until the trees close in again, not dense, just deliberate. Each trunk spaced like pillars in a forgotten museum. You look around. This isn't a forest, it's a gallery. And at the center, glass. A long corridor of it, clean, cold, clinical. Bright white walls, temperature-controlled silence. You've entered a museum, not the kind with dinosaurs, the kind with lives. You step through the corridor and the objects begin to appear. A tiny pair of moccasins, perfectly beaded. A cradle board, aged but whole. A ceremonial rattle, its handle cracked but still humming with potential. Each one sits behind glass, labeled, numbered, cataloged. You pause at each. You notice how the descriptions use words like specimen, artifact, unidentified tribe. But you know better. These weren't things. They were belongings. Held, used, named, grieved. They weren't found. They were taken. A feathered headdress under spotlights. A woman's regalia on a mannequin that never danced. A pipe wrapped in wire so it can't be lifted. You glance around. Cameras watch you. Not to protect you, but to protect the objects from you. As if you're the one who might take. You find yourself asking, why is this here? Who asked for this to be kept like this? Who gets to decide when something stops being sacred and starts being educational? A plaque on the wall reads, donated by a private collector. But that's just a longer way to spell stolen. In one corner of the gallery, a glass case holds an ash bundle, wrapped in birch bark, tied with red thread. The label says only, ceremonial object, use unknown, use unknown. You press your forehead gently to the glass because you can feel the use. It was meant for letting go. And here it is, trapped. You whisper, not loud, but certain. Someone remembers. The case fogs slightly. You step back, continue walking. The museum narrows until it opens into a final room. Larger, quiet, empty, except for a single wooden chair and a small white card beside it. The card reads, absence. You sit, because that's what it's for. And in that moment, you don't just see what was taken, you feel what was left behind. The songs unsung, the hands unheld, the names unspoken, because the tongues that held them were silenced before they could finish the syllable. And still, you're here. Still listening. Still witnessing. You leave the chair. At the exit, a mirror waits. Small, simple, it doesn't show your face clearly. It shows your lineage, real or adopted, chosen or inherited. It reminds you, you are not outside this story. Outside, the wind moves differently, not faster, more precise, more aware. You step back into it. And beneath glass floors and whispering archives, the turtle shifts, one slow turn. carrying back not only what was taken, but what must be returned. The museum disappears behind you, swallowed by the trees like it was ashamed to exist in the open. The trail curls downward now, deeper into a hollow where the earth feels raw and honest. No buildings, no labels, no glass. Just dirt, roots, and a silence that waits, not out of awkwardness, but out of respect. The trees grow wide here, wider than any you've seen. Their trunks cracked but unbroken, their bark holding lichen like old scars hold laughter. At the base of one tree, you see something familiar. A turtle. Carved into the bark, not recent, not flashy, just there. A symbol, weathered by time, but not erased. And beside it, something else, a crack. Not natural, not accidental. This isn't the kind of break trees make on their own. You place your palm over it and the bark feels tired. You press gently and it gives, just a little, enough to let you peer inside. The hollow isn't empty. It's filled with shards. Bits of wampum belts, snapped arrowheads, half-carved dolls, feathers still stained with paint, bundles of cedar long dried out, a child's necklace broken in the middle. This is a hash, not a shrine, not a display, a place where memory went to hide when it wasn't safe to be held openly. These were sacred once, and then for a long time they were dangerous. You kneel, you reach in carefully and pull out a piece of pottery no larger than a seashell. There's a spiral etched into the clay, familiar now, comforting. You close your fingers around it. The tree groans softly, like breath caught in the throat of someone who's been quiet too long. You realize this hollow isn't a wound, it's a vault. And the things inside? Not broken, just buried. On purpose. For later. For now. Because for centuries, stories and ceremonies had to go underground. Into trunks under floorboards, behind whispers. And still, they survived. Even in silence, they waited. And now, with your hand in this old tree's chest, they begin to wake. A breeze moves through the forest. Not loud, just certain. It rustles the leaves in a way that feels like a conversation between time and breath. A thank you, a welcome back. You set the pottery down carefully, but not in the hollow. You place it in the open, on the ground where sunlight touches it. You look up. Across the clearing now, more trees bear turtle carvings. Some fresh, some ancient, some carved by hands you'll never know. Others recent enough that the bark is still curling around the edge of each line, healing without hiding. You walk tree to tree, and each one holds its own cache. You don't open them. You don't need to. Because the fact that they're still here is the only message you need. And suddenly a truth lands in your chest like soft thunder. We didn't lose the stories. We buried them, like seeds. And they are germinating now. You stand. The forest feels fuller, like someone turned the volume up. Not loud, just present. The kind of fullness that comes not from sound, but from knowing. You walk back toward the edge of the clearing, the air warm against your cheeks, the pottery still glowing behind you like a heartbeat rediscovered. And deep beneath the roots, under cedar and silence, the turtle shifts. Just a little. Enough to push the soil upward. To make space for something to grow. The clearing fades behind you, but not from memory. It lingers like a soft drum beat at the base of your skull, slow and certain. The kind that reminds you, you found something. Or maybe it found you. The trail is thinner now, almost shy, not worn by many feet. It winds toward a strange smell in the air. Smoke, yes, but not fire. Tobacco, cedar, sage, sweetgrass. You recognize it before you see the source. The scent is older than your lungs. You step into a wide open field, and there at the center, a circle. Not of stones, not of trees, of people, seated, still, breathing as one. They form a ring around a low, glowing center. The smoke rises gently like a ribbon of thought unraveling toward the sky. No one speaks, but everything is being said. You've entered a ceremony, not a performance, not a reenactment, the real thing. And you are not the audience. You are being invited. A woman, middle-aged, calm-eyed, gestures for you to sit. You do. A pipe is passed, not for you to smoke, but to watch. Every movement is sacred, every pause is deliberate. The way hands wrap around the stem, the way smoke is blown to each direction, it's not ritual for show. It's language, spoken in elements. The elder in the circle begins to hum, and his voice doesn't rise above the wind. It blends with it. You don't understand the words, you understand the feeling. It's not prayer for forgiveness, it's remembrance. of things that were never supposed to be lost, of things that were taken and are now being slowly, fiercely called back. You close your eyes. You see flashes. A girl hiding her language under her tongue at school. A boy sneaking his grandfather's stories into the lines of a textbook essay. A woman lighting sage in secret before job interviews. A teenager recording drum songs in a bedroom sound studio. You open your eyes again. And the pipe has reached you. You don't take it. You bow your head. Because here, humility is the only proper response. The elder nods once, approval. You've passed a test you didn't know you were taking. Someone starts to sing. It's a high, clear note, wavering at first, then finding its center. Then another voice joins, and another. No instruments, just breath. And you suddenly realize this isn't revival. This is continuity. What the world tried to erase wasn't burned away. It was kept warm, like coals under ash, waiting for someone to lift the cover and blow gently. And now the flame is rising again. Not fast, but bright. The song ends. Silence follows. Not emptiness, but fullness. Like a room just after someone says, "I love you," and means it. The elder looks to you and says the only words spoken aloud, "We didn't forget. We just weren't allowed to show you." You stand slowly. The people don't disappear. They don't dissolve into mist like in stories told by those who need magic to believe in survival. They stay, living, breathing, belonging. You walk away from the circle, the scent of sage still clinging to your clothes like memory you'd never dare wash out. And far beneath the sacred ground where the pipe was passed, where the drumbeat still echoes in the soil, where ceremony survived in silence, the turtle shifts. A deeper breath now. A remembering breath, because smoke rises and so do we. The field and the song fall behind you like a dream you know you'll never forget. Not because it was vivid, but because it wasn't a dream at all. It happened. You were there. You keep walking. And as you do, something begins to change in the air. Not colder, not heavier, just quiet in a new way. The wind moves slower. The grass no longer sways. Even the birds seem to pause mid-flight. You've entered a space of names. You don't see them at first. But then the light shifts, and there they are. Markers, thousands. Not gravestones, not statues, just names etched into stone, carved into wood, beaded into leather, painted onto drums, sewn into shawls, stitched into scars. They stretch in every direction. A sea of syllables, some whole, some broken, some in languages you've never heard, yet still feel somehow true. You walk among them. Each one has weight, not physical, moral. A name isn't just identity, it's existence. A name is a drumbeat, a map, a ceremony, a calling. You pause at one, a single word carved carefully into cedar, no translation, no date, just a name, Tanawatsi. You whisper it. It feels like something waking up. You step farther into the sea of names. Some are fading, some are fresh, some are held together with twine, others surrounded by wildflowers, candles, photos, feathers, toys. You realize this is a roll call, not of who's missing, of who's still remembered. A woman appears beside you, braided hair, jacket patched with beadwork. She's not crying, but she has cried. You can see it in the way her jaw holds silence. She touches one name gently with her thumb. "This was my aunt," she says. "They said she ran away, but she didn't. She was taken." She says it flat, without drama. The truth doesn't need volume. You nod, not to respond, just to be with it. "I come here every year," she adds, just to say her name out loud. Then she looks at you. "Say one, anyone, doesn't matter if you don't know how." You hesitate, but you do. You choose one that catches your eye, painted in a half circle on deerskin beneath a faded sun. You say it, badly, but honestly. And as you do, a breeze stirs. One name, that's all it takes. The woman nods once, then walks away. You realize now, this isn't a memorial. It's a library. Not of facts, of presence. Every name a book, a return. You keep walking. You read as many names as you can. You don't memorize them. You carry them. And then on the edge of the name field, a final marker. This one etched into stone with simple letters surrounded by 4 cedar posts. It says, "Say our names and we walk again." You speak it aloud, and the wind picks up, not as a storm, as a procession, a wind full of footsteps, of stories, of songs, of returns, and deep, deep beneath the names, where memory and language are sewn into the dirt, the turtle shifts. Not from pain, from recognition. It knows these names. It's carried them all this time. You step beyond the field of names and the ground feels different. not softer, not harder, just changed. As if the land itself has heard everything you've just heard and needs a moment to process it. And then you see it, a flicker of blue, then red, then the soft glow of a screen in the distance. You walk toward it, cautious at first, because this light doesn't come from fire or sky, it comes from technology. You crest a rise and see what looks like a camp, tents and teepees, yes, but also charging cables, solar panels, drones folded beside sage bundles. A laptop sits on a buffalo hide. Someone is live streaming a language lesson over Starlink. You've arrived in Digital Turtle Island. Not a contradiction, an evolution. You pass a young man typing on a keyboard with beaded wrist cuffs. He's coding a video game set in a pre-contact world where players gather herbs, offer tobacco, and trade in wampum. He doesn't look up, he's focused. A girl beside him wears AirPods and a ribbon skirt. She's editing a TikTok video, an elder explaining the proper way to harvest sweetgrass, layered with loaf beats and subtitles in Cree. It already has 80,000 views. You smile. Because this isn't survival, this is revival. You walk deeper into the camp. A woman sits in front of a ring light, applying red paint to the center of her face. Behind her is a banner, Cashed Hap MMIWG2S. She doesn't need a studio. She is the broadcast. You pass a trailer-turned-podcast booth. Inside, two aunties debate tribal politics, call out colonizers by name, and roast each other like it's Sunday dinner. You catch one line. You want reconciliation? Start with land back. Then we'll talk hugs. Laughter explodes. In the distance, kids live stream a powwow on Twitch. Viewers drop emojis like prayers. You sit on a stump and take it all in. It's so easy to think that tradition and tech must clash. But here, they coexist. Screens glow beside story circles. Wi-Fi signals carry words once banned in boarding schools. Digital smoke signals travel faster, but they still carry the same fire. A young woman walks by, phone in hand. She stops, sees you, and says, "You look like you're waiting for permission." You blink. She grins. "You don't need it. Post the story and post all of it." She points to your heart. "That's your platform. That's your signal." She walks on, her jingle dress shimmering like pixels in motion. You stand, look out at the digital camp pulsing with life, and you realize they didn't lose the culture. They just uploaded it. Encrypted in memes, backed up in cloud drives, restored in classrooms, on reservations, and in city apartments alike. This is what resistance looks like now, not just protest signs and blockades, but apps, avatars, augmented memory. You pull out your phone, unsure why. Then you open the camera, not to take, to witness. You pan slowly over the scene, language and laughter, braided cables, songs played on digital drums. You film until the battery blinks red. And when it does, you don't feel disconnected. You feel part of the network. Because this isn't about going back. It's about going forward without letting go. You slip the phone back into your pocket. And far below the glowing screens, beneath satellites and root bundles under code and clay, the turtle shifts again. A slow nod, approving, adapting, uploading the memory. The digital camp fades behind you like a signal drifting out of range, but its warmth lingers, glowing under your skin like an ember in the dark. You walk on and the land begins to quiet again, but it's not the hush of sorrow this time. It's the silence that comes before birth. The trail narrows, cutting between low hills. You see smoke again, not the gray wisps of morning, but a golden spiral rising steadily, confidently into the blue. The scent reaches you next. Clay, cedar, ash, earth. You follow it, and there in a wide open field surrounded by singing grass is a lodge. Not broken, not museum pinned. Living. Women move in and out of the entrance. Some sing softly, others laugh, full-bodied, no apology. Inside, voices chant as hands work, stirring, weaving, lifting, cradling. You approach carefully. A woman notices you and gestures you closer. She opens the flap and says just two words. Creation story. You step in. Inside, the space glows orange from the central fire. Around it sit elders, children, aunties, cousins. No podium, no spotlight, just one woman at the fire, her eyes soft as dusk. She begins to speak, but not to the room. Before you were born, you were a thought. Before the land had names, it had breath. And before humans arrived, the animals made space. She tells of Sky Woman falling, again, but this time slower, with new details. The story curves in on itself, repeating not because it forgot, but because this is how truths are layered. Each retelling brings a new corner into the light. She speaks of the animals gathering, of the turtle rising, of the mud pressed into creation by many small hands, not one hero, but many helpers. She smiles as she says, "The world wasn't built by force, it was offered." You sit near the fire and feel warmth on your back, the story on your chest. The children lean forward, the elders lean back, everyone hears the same words, but each hears a different meaning. That's the power of a real creation story. Not to explain, to align. You notice now the smoke spiraling through a hole in the roof. It doesn't rise fast. It dances, pauses, curls, ascends. A prayer without panic, a lesson in patience. You close your eyes and let the woman's voice pull you deeper. She tells of when humans forgot how they were made. When they thought the land was theirs, not themselves. When they thought to own instead of offer. And how each time they forgot, the turtle would shift beneath them, gently, then firmly, then loudly, until someone remembered again. Someone like you. Someone like us. She stops speaking. The fire pops. No one claps. No one rushes to stand. The story lands like dust, light but impossible to ignore. You rise. Not quickly, not casually. You bow slightly. Not out of custom, but because your body knows now. Outside, the sky is deepening. Not night yet, but that golden stretch where shadows lengthen and stories settle into the corners of the world. You look back at the lodge. Smoke still rising, children still playing, women still singing. The story didn't end. It opened. You take a deep breath, and you know for the first time with more than words, you are not walking the story. You are inheriting it. And far below, beneath the fire pit, under every repetition of every creation song, the turtle shifts again, not tired, not burdened, but ready, because creation never stopped. It's still happening. The sun begins to lower behind the hills now, its light stretched thin like a thread of honey poured across the sky. You walk through the tall grass, slow and unhurried, as if the land itself is telling you, there's no rush when you remember where you come from. The air hums with a kind of completion, not an ending, but the fullness of a circle reaching its own hand. Ahead, a river, not wide, but eternal. It moves with the kind of patience you've been learning to feel, not fast, not slow, just right. The current tells time not in seconds, but in stories. You sit by its edge, across the water, another bank, trees, shadows, a flicker of firelight, and someone is waiting. You don't see their face, but you know them, not from a past life, from this one. From dreams, from stories, from blood, from language, from every whisper that carried you to this point. They raise their hand. And you raise yours. No words, just a gesture. I see you. The river doesn't rush between you. It holds space. You look down. The reflection on the surface shows not just your face, but everything you've become on this walk. You see the children's shoes, the thunderbird's wings, the beads, the belts, the breath. You see the corn walking again. You see the treaties still waiting to be honored. You see the dances that never stopped. And beneath it all, you see the turtle. Its back is the land. Its shell is the calendar. Its eyes are older than memory. Its breath rises with the smoke of every fire you've sat beside. You kneel at the edge of the water, and you speak a name, your own. Not the one you write on forms, the one that has slowly taken shape in you across this entire journey. The one made of listening, remembering, grieving, laughing, dancing, resisting, returning. The one made of land and story braided together. You don't need to shout it. The river hears. Across the water, the waiting figure nods, then turns and walks into the trees. You stay a while longer, watching the reflection shimmer, and then slowly you rise. You walk along the riverbank, the light slipping softer behind you. Fireflies spark like quiet applause, and the path begins to rise. One last time. It's not steep, it's welcoming. You climb the hill, and as you crest the top, you look back. The whole land stretches behind you. Not a map, not a memory. A promise. And beneath it all, the turtle moves. One last shift, a deep inhale, preparing for the final story. Not the end, but the beginning. Again. You stand at the hilltop. The world below you is gold-drenched now. The last light of day laid gently across the earth like a woven blanket, edges frayed, colors still warm from the sun's long touch. The air is calm. Still. Listening. You've walked far, not in miles, in meaning. And now, here at the crest of your journey, the land opens one last time, not to teach, not to test, but but to welcome you home before you a circle of stones. 12. You recognize them. You've seen this shape again and again in beadwork, in smoke, in the turtle's shell, in the stars. You step into the circle, not out of obligation, out of knowing. Inside, a single stone sits in the center, smooth, old. It glows faintly in the twilight, as if it has held fire before. You kneel beside it. It feels warm, alive. You rest your hand on it, and then the voice returns. Not from outside, from within. But now, it's not one voice, it's all of them. The Sky Woman, the twins, the buffalo, the whispering trees, the corn people, the bead keepers, the children, the elders, the wind, the fire, the names, the dancer, the coder, the ancestor who carved the turtle into the first tree. They do not speak in unison. They speak in harmony. And what they say is not prophecy or warning or demand. They say, you are ready. Ready not to leave, but to continue. Because this wasn't a story you walk through. It's a story you're now responsible for. The circle around you begins to pulse, not visually, not loudly, just a feeling, a heartbeat that belongs not to you alone, but to a much larger body. The land. You understand now. The turtle has never stopped carrying us. We just forgot what it felt like to move with it, to breathe with it, to balance on its back without stomping. You rise. Above you, the first stars begin to shimmer. They take familiar shapes, spirals, shells, faces, not constellations. Reminders. You look down the other side of the hill. A path stretches out. It doesn't lead back to where you began, because there is no back. Only forward, woven with memory, anchored in truth, carried by the ones who refuse to vanish. You take a deep breath and step forward. Just one step. That's all it takes to continue a story. That's all it ever took. And far beneath your feet, beneath the hill, the river, the bones, the roots, the treaties, the glass, the fire, the feathers, the names, and the wind, the turtle shifts. A final breath for tonight, a gentle stillness, a knowing hush. The stars blink slower, the air grows thick and kind, and the world begins to cradle you. Your shoulders grow heavy, your eyes soften, your breath matches the rhythm of the land. The stories tuck themselves into the folds of your mind like lullabies wrapped in smoke and soil. You are safe, you are seen, you are remembered. And as sleep comes soft and deep, the turtle hums, low, slow, steady. End of script, sweet dreams.